Hello and welcome to Tomi'sGameTable. Today we're actually not going to be building or crafting anything. Instead, we're going to answer a very fundamental question for this channel, and that is, what is Dungeons and Dragons? So D&D, or Dungeons and Dragons, was originally founded by two friends, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, back in 1974, and it was very loosely based off of the game Chainmail, which came out in 1971. And since its birth in 1974, it's actually inspired so many different things around the world. If you've ever leveled up in a video game, that's basically Dungeons and Dragons. If you've ever watched like a movie or a cartoon or a show about a bunch of unlikely heroes that have all been thrust together to try and, take down a big bad or save a princess or a prince from a castle or find a rare artifact, that's D&D. As you could imagine, Dungeons & Dragons, and this is only speculation, that Gygax and Arneson were very inspired by things like Tolkien's work, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and things like that. And ever since, these things have just had a ripple effect across the whole world and inspired so many different things that you're probably already into and didn't even realize that it was inspired by Dungeons & Dragons. But that still doesn't really explain what it is. So Dungeons & Dragons is basically a tabletop role-playing game, or a form of storytelling collectively with a group of friends. You can break it down to two basic things. You've got your players and you've got a dungeon master, or a GM I like to call them because dungeon master sounds creepy. So a game master can be everything from a referee, a director, and sometimes even a writer of the story that you as a player will be playing in. So whenever you get a group of friends together, you need to make a decision of who's going to be the dungeon master and who's going to be everybody else. And I just recommend either getting someone who already knows the game and the rules a little bit, or someone who just doesn't mind reading and doesn't mind doing that research to try and become the DM or the game master. A lot of people have this misconception that the dungeon master or the game master is playing against the players. It's actually not the case. It's more of a collective storytelling. Dungeons & Dragons is almost like something that can facilitate a great opportunity just to catch up with your friends, be a little bit vulnerable, a bit silly, because we're all adults now. It's been many years since we've actually played, so sometimes it is funny to put on a funny accent if you're going to play a dwarven barbarian wielding a great axe, but it's something that you wouldn't usually do outside of a game table. So be vulnerable, have a bit of a laugh. It is awkward the first few times you play, but you'll find the more you immerse yourself in it and the more you get involved, the more fun you'll end up having. So there's a few different places you can start. You can even jump onto the D&D Beyond website, and I think they've even got a free download for the basic rules, and you can kind of go from there. So that's completely free. Download a character sheet off a PDF on Google. Doesn't cost you any money. Only thing you might have to buy that you mightn't already have is just a set of these. They're just a set of polyhedral dice. So you've got a 20-sided dice, 12-sided dice. These are referred to as 100-sided dice, but they're 10-sided. Another one of those, but with smaller numbers on it. An 8-sided dice, one that you've probably all seen before, a 6-sided dice, also your 4-sided dice. But you can get these online, or if you go to your local hobby shop or something, they usually sell them as a pack similar to that. Not too expensive. Basically all you need to get rolling is a pencil, an eraser, and a set of these. Another option that you do have as well is you can go out and buy things like the starter set. So this is one of the original ones, and you can see on the back here, it actually comes with your own adventure module, a set of dice, some character sheets that are already pre-generated so you don't have to think about too much of what kind of character build you want to do. And yeah, it's a really cool place to start. Wizards of the Coast have released a bunch of these over the years. You've got lots of different options. So once you and your friends have decided who's going to be the players and who's going to be the game master, now is, in my opinion, the funnest part of the whole game, and that's creating your character if you're going to be a player. So you'll start off with one of these. This is called a character sheet, and this will explain everything that your character can do, all the things that your character is. You've got your ability scores, which is like your strength, your charisma, your dexterity, all that kind of stuff. You've got all your different information like your character's name, what alignment they have, are they evil or are they good, are they a bit chaotic or are they very lawful? There's lots of different options there. We're going to go into more deep dives on these things with other videos. This is just a basic overview of the whole thing. You've got your skills. You've got all your different equipment, all your different weapons, spells, things like that. What your character looks like, what race they are or species, what their occupation is, or we like to call it a class. So when you're picking your species, you've got a bunch of sort of original ones which came out in the player's handbook. elf, half-elf, human, dwarf, halfling, dragonborn, half-orc. I'm probably missing a couple in there. Tiefling as well, tiefling. Obviously this game's been around for a long time, so there's, I don't remember how many there are off the top of my head, but there'll be over 20 different races or species that you can choose from. So once you've chosen your race or species, then you can move on to picking your occupation, or again, class. So your occupation is more, what does your character do? Is he a fighter with a big wielding greatsword? Or is it like a rogue who likes to sneak around and pick locks and has a lot of versatile uses with their skills? Or are you a spellcaster? Sit back like a bit of a glass cannon, but just deal heaps and heaps of damage. These are a few different things that you can choose from. Again, you've got your basic ones in your player's handbook. And then you've got all these other expansion books as well, which you can choose from. All these things really require is a quick Google search if you don't want to invest in buying all of the books, and you'll be able to find an endless amount of different choices that you can make your character off. If all of this is a bit overwhelming, I always say to players, think of someone that you really like in, cinema or like a movie or a book or something that you've read, and someone that you just think is a real cool, kick-ass character that you would enjoy playing something similar to. So if you like Geralt of Riviere, for example, you can make like a monster hunting ranger that's got like a little bit of vampiric blood in them or something like that. If you really like, say, Batman, that's always a bit of a fun one. You can be a bit of a rogue mixed with a bit of a fighter, so you can sneak in the shadows. But yeah, and that's a place I like to really start with a lot of my friends who are new players, is just don't think about all of this stuff, just think about whatever you would like to play, and chances are Dungeons & Dragons have got something written to accommodate what you're after. So going back to these dice, I got lots of dice. I'm a bit of a dice gremlin. I love dice. You can never have too many dice. But the reason why we use these is it can't all just be storytelling, because things can just get a little bit loose and wild. If you say, I want to go into the sky and assassinate a god and just do it, then it might just be a bit silly and you might lose the immersion of the game. So what these are for is you usually roll 20-sided dice, and that will basically determine whether or not your skills or your attacks or your spells are either successful or non-successful. So usually the higher the number, the better the roll. And if you roll a 20 on a 20-sided dice, we call that a critical hit. So again, this is just really cool collective storytelling that you can do with your friends, leveling up together, going on adventures, all that kind of stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, then I reckon you'd probably like D&D. If you've played a couple of rounds of D&D and you're really enjoying what you've got with just the free stuff you can get on D&D and Beyond and your set of dice, or getting one of these starter sets, if you are really enjoying and you want to just keep on moving, the first place which I'd recommend anyone to go and invest in is buying the Player's Handbook. This has all of your race or species options, all of your class occupations, all the rules, everything you need to know to play your own game. I'd even recommend, even as a dungeon master, this is kind of all you need, especially just for starting off. But if you are the game master or the dungeon master, then there's another book that I would recommend just dungeon masters to buy. It's maybe not as important for players to buy this one, and that is the Dungeon Master's Guide. So with these two books, you should be able to run any games you can possibly think of. That's all you'll really need. Your dice, pen and paper, character sheets, and a couple of books. Wizards of the Coast have released so many books at this stage now that if you just love collecting stuff, it's also just a really great collection hobby to get into as well. So another question you might be asking is, why are we actually making all of this stuff? If it's a collective storytelling, then why do we need all these little bits and pieces that we're making on this channel? Well, as you can see, I've actually set up a bit of a basic encounter here. So we have our band of adventurers who are going to be heading into this bit of a dungeon system, and we have a beholder up this end who's controlling some undead who are going to come through and attack our players. So a lot of people don't have a visual imagination. So this is like a visual representation of the story that we're telling so that everybody can see exactly what's going on. I've purposely only used things that we've made on the channel so far. So we've got our lovely little pillars over here. We've got our rocks, formations. You can see I haven't used the flock one because again, it would be a bit weird to have a grassy rock in a dungeon. And we're using our dungeon tiles. This is just a battle map. You can get those from hobby stores and all that kind of stuff. We might even look at making one because why not? So yeah, this is the reason why we're making all of this stuff, is it gives you a visual representation of the story that's being told for those people who don't have a very visual imagination. So at the moment, I've just created a basic encounter where these players, this party of adventurers, have wandered through the entrance of this dungeon, and they can hear a little bit of noise coming up from the hallways, and what this character has just noticed is there's a legion of undead coming down to attack them. And what they don't know is that it's being controlled by this gnarly little beholder over here. We'll go way more into all the lore and what all these creatures and stuff are down the track. It's things like these. You've got three basic sort of things in Dungeons & Dragons. You have your battles, your attacks and stuff like that. You have exploration, which is searching the world that you're playing in. And you've also have the social aspect of the game, which is maybe talking to people, trying to get clues and tips about the mission that you might be on. So this is a great representation of when these dice come into effect. So just say this guy comes up here and wants to attack with him. He'll have to use a 20-sided dice. And he rolled a 6, which isn't very good, so he probably doesn't hit. And then we'll move around to the next person's player, which might be this guy. He might want to just move up, and then move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. The enemies also have a turn, and the way that we establish this is a little thing called rolling for initiative. So that's when we grab our trusty 20-sided dice again. Everybody rolls one of these, including the Game Master for the monsters, and whoever gets the highest number goes first, down in ascending order. Now, if you still have a lot of questions about this game, that's completely understandable. It's a massive game, and don't worry, we're going to be going into deep dives on all these different subjects so that you can understand a little bit more about the game and how to play it best with your friends. That's basically Dungeons & Dragons in a nutshell. It's something we'll go a lot deeper into as videos go on. We'll have more specific videos based on specific things that you want to know. If there is anything that you specifically want to know about the game, especially early on, whether or not it's getting into a game or how to start your first game, how to do a session 0, which is something we'll go into in another video, then feel free to throw a comment in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you about how you can get a game going with your friends. So I'm just looking into making a Patreon, which I should have up and running in the next couple of weeks. So if you would like to support me, it's just a way for me to keep this channel growing so that I can invest in more cameras and more gear, tools, other bits and pieces. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in supporting, then please jump on over to my Patreon and have a bit of a look. Alright, don't forget to like and subscribe, jump onto my Facebook page, give that a bit of a like as well. Starting to get a little bit more happening over on that side of things. If you've got any projects, I'd love to see them, so feel free to post them onto the Facebook page, or you can even inbox me as well. So thank you so much for dropping in on another episode of Tommy's Game Table. There's lots of videos out there on YouTube, so thanks again for clicking on this one, and stay tuned for the next video.